Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Hell. I'll be your guide this lovely evening. Hello everyone, welcome in. Let's get into the fun facts, and they're definitely gonna be very fact and very fun too. But yes, they're gonna be very facts. Hi, welcome to Hell's Academy. Today we're gonna talk about the 7 facts of this week. So, without further ado, let us get started. Iberian harvester ants will give birth to male clones of a different species and then mate to make hybrid babies. In a word, it's bizarre. In 2 words, very strange. So this is, as far as we know, the only animal that operates like this because of how weird it actually is. So what do they actually do? Well, you have the queen, you have like the colony of ants of a particular species called the Iberian harvester ants, and you have a different species, which is, well, I don't recall the name of it, but there's like a different species of ants, and like genetically they're close enough to each other that they can mate with each other. The same way that like dogs, you know, can all mate with each other because they're all dogs. So what you have here is that the Iberian harvester ants evolved together with another species where they would mate together. And the goal is to create hybrid ant workers because the hybrid ants they're bigger, they're stronger, they're tougher. So the queen really wanted hybrid ants. But there is a problem. See, because they needed the other ant species, it means that they could only expand to places that already had the other ant species, which is a problem because sometimes they wanted to expand beyond that range. So what do? They just took the different species and they just started cloning them. The same thing that any normal person would do in that situation. You need a specific species, just clone them. Easy. The queen would collect like genetic material, I think in the form of like the seeds. She would collect genetic materials of the species that she wants to mate with, and then she has a way of ensuring that her DNA doesn't get mixed in there. So she then lays eggs, but those eggs don't have her DNA. So essentially, it's a clone. It's a clone. It's a different. It only contains the DNA of a different species. So you get clones, and then the clones and the queen would, you know, have the fun times together, and then you get hybrid babies. Again, only animal in the world that we know that does this because it's so strange. And you get the next fact in. Orb-weaver spiders make spider webs that reflect UV light to trick pollinators. Look how the world ties itself together. A few weeks ago, we had the fact that pollinators can see UV light. And the reason why is because flowers will use UV light to guide the pollinators to where they need to land. So then the spiders went, okay, so if they follow the UV light, why won't I abuse it? I can take my webs, I can make them reflect UV light. So they would trick the pollinators into thinking that they're flowers, and then they would try landing on them. They're tricking the pollinators so that they would think it's flowers, they would land on the web, and then they would get entangled, whereupon they would be eaten by the spiders. They wouldn't be beaten, they would be, well, I guess they're kind of beaten. Spiders don't have like jaws. Instead, they have modified legs that became fangs, and they use the fangs to inject the poison into the venom into the enemies, and they also inject the like digestive stuff, because spiders just sort of inject their stomach into their meal, and then it gets decomposed, it gets broken down into a liquid, and then they slurp, and then they slurp it up. Look, when you're a sack of flesh, it's really easy to just make like extra limbs and just have them pop out of your skin. But when you have exoskeleton out, then making holes in the exoskeleton so you can have stuff get out, like legs, it becomes a lot harder. And because of how hard it is, the simplest solution is to just take a leg and turn it into something that isn't a leg. So most external stuff on like insects is in fact modified legs. Spider fangs, legs. Mandibles, legs. The silk spindles, legs. Antennas, legs. Everything is a leg. Everything used to be a leg, and then it stopped being a leg because it found a better use. Pretty much. Flowers made the glowing landing strip for the pollinators, then the spider made a fake detour sign. Yeah, the spiders literally make a big sign, hey, land here, come here, be here. And the pollinators who have clearly never watched a good movie in their life do not know that this is obviously a trap. Next fact, alcohol causes relaxation, and then your brain becomes more sensitive to compensate, which can last to the hangover. Yeah, that's how it works. You become the alcohol like relaxes you, makes you more tired, makes you hippie, and then your brain tries to compensate for that, so it like becomes more alert. It tries becoming more active, so you wouldn't like fall asleep. And then you get a hangover and the alcohol doesn't make you sleepy anymore, but your brain it's still compensating, it's still alert, it's still active. So because of that, you become like hypersensitive, because now you're like compensating beyond the baseline. So now you're just like hyper aware and sensitive to everything that's happening, you know. So if there's like a loud noise or something, it like bothers you a lot. This is one of the reasons why this happens during hangovers, in fact. Let's go to Thursday fact. Eels have such a strong calling to return to their homeland that they will escape tanks, cross dams, and even travel thousands of miles to reach it. This is true. I know, because I researched this fact. But, so with eels, if you remember, eels are nature's perfect freaks, and they do a bunch of weird stuff, and it's not really clear why, but we do know they do a bunch of weird stuff. For a long time, people didn't know how they reproduced, and then they started putting trackers on them, and they did like a lot of expeditions to try and find the baby eels. Eels are freaks. When they reach like sexual maturity, they will all start heading towards the Bermuda Triangle, basically. And during the way, their organs will dissolve, and they will make reproductive organs, and then they will reach, have a big schmecks party, and then die. And then you get babies. So eels, they all go to like the Bermuda Triangle when it's time, when they get the calling. And this calling is so powerful that just like how salmon will swim upstream, eels will travel insane distances to reach it. It's even been proven that if there are obstacles in the way, like if there are dams or if the eels are stuck in tanks, they will just escape them. Eels will escape tanks when it's their time to mature, just so that they can reach the Bermuda Triangle. This is incredible that they actually all know from everywhere in the world, they know how to find it. It's incredible that their sense of navigation is so good that they can actually find it from pretty much anywhere. Insane. There are different types of eels. There's, I think, like the American and the European ones, and they're slightly different, but I'm pretty sure they all still go to the Bermuda Triangle, just like different parts of it, depending on the eel type. But yeah, nature's perfect freaks. It is so weird, in fact. Say you keep like a raccoon or an octopus or something in a cage. Like, sure, it might wanna come out sometimes, but it's not like one day it wakes up like, I have received divine revelation, I have a mission, we must go on a crusade, Deus Volt, you know. But like eels will just straight up do it and then go on a crusade and then travel thousands of miles. They're one of the animals with really the most insane migration. I mean, sure, whales, there are other animals that migrate, you know, you have like whales and obviously birds and butterflies and all kinds. But I think eels have like the strangest migration, in my opinion. You know, with like birds, they basically, like birds will travel in a group, and sometimes the route that they take it's literally just it's knowledge that's been passed down through generation. Actually, so this is gonna sound insane, because it is. They had a problem once where I think there was like two groups of, there was like a small group of some kind of bird that was starting to get wiped out because they were really small. So many of them died that they literally forgot the route. All the birds that knew about a particular route of a particular migration route died, and because of that they lost the generational knowledge and they just didn't make any new routes. So they just kept using the old ones, and they wouldn't meet other birds, and eventually they would have gone extinct. So what scientists did, and this is insane, they took some guy, they put him in an airplane costume, and they had him bond with the birds so that they will recognize the airplane as a fellow member of the pack. And then they use the plane And then once they got them accustomed to like I don't remember if it's like a helicopter or plane, but they got them accustomed to the plane, and then they took an actual plane and they used it to lead the birds through a new migration route so they can meet other members of their species. Imagine justifying this project. I mean, I think they worked for like the government. I'm not sure if it's a independent group or if it's like government mandated. But imagine going to your boss like, hey, I know how to save this species from extinction. I have the bestest idea ever. What if we take a guy and we put him in an airplane costume and we have him feed the birds? I imagine, see, when I think about it, my theory is that they accidentally bought an airplane costume first, and then they had to justify the expense because it was a very expensive costume. So they just made up this project so they can get their money back. To be fair to the scientists, the craziest part about this project is that it worked. They managed to teach the bird about the path again, and now the birds are using it and they're meeting other members of their species, and they're like safer now, so they're recovering. It freaking worked. They put a guy in an airplane costume and it freaking worked. I love the lengths that environmental scientists will sometimes go just to do this stuff. Like, that is actually insane. Okay, so let's go to the next fact. Baby eels are transparent and used to be considered a different species. So as you can see, there's a picture here of eels, and they are in fact transparent. This is how baby eels look like. Not only are they transparent, but generally throughout their life, eels will change colors. They first start transparent, and then they get another color, and then I think they become like silver eels, which is usually what people think about when they see eels. And then at the end they become, I think it's like yellow eels at the end, and that's when they reach maturity. That's when they reach sexual maturity, and they go to the big party in the Bermuda. And by the way, I don't think they actually do it. I think they just release their stuff in the water, and then the egg and the sperm just kind of float around and bump into each other. I wouldn't know though, because no one has ever seen them do it, ever. So we don't actually know. But yes, they are transparent. At first they thought that they're different species. They classified them as a different species, but eventually someone realized that they had like I think it's like something in the way that their spine is built, or I think it's like the amount of columns in their spine or something. Someone realized that they have this like extremely specific similarity with other eels, where it's like it's such a specific similarity, and they're like the only ones that only they share it. Someone eventually put 2 and 2 together and was like, wait, no, this is too specific. Like they have to be extremely closely related. There's no way that they're, but why do they look so different if they're related? And eventually someone managed to crack it, that one of them grows into the other, and they're actually the same species, just at different stages. As for why they're transparent, I think that's pretty obvious. If you're transparent, then you're hard, by definition, you're hard to see, which means that predators are gonna have a harder time getting you. Like, sure, you can make an outline and there's like the black at the edge, but it's way harder. It's way harder to catch something that's transparent than something which you can clearly see. And yeah, and then when they're bigger, they need it less, because, you know, like they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, they need less camouflage. So they change their colors to do other stuff. Being silver colored is also pretty common in the ocean. You have like silver fish, not the insect, fish that are just straight up silver on the outside of their body. They have like a layer of reflective cells, basically. And they're supposed to reflect light, so that when you have a group of them and a predator is like coming at them, then the predator will get blinded by the light. And even if not blinded, because it would be hard to make the outline of the different fishes. So they would be harder to hunt, and they would be harder to track down. I have no idea why they're yellow though. Don't ask me. I don't know. Stealth failed. Deploying flashbang. Flashbang. So that's why my silver fishing lures work so well. I don't know. Maybe. Silver is supposed to make the outline harder to distinguish. But some animals don't even need that. Some animals just straight up have a very weird outline. There's a specific type of horsefish, I think. Of seahorse. What is horsefish? There's no such thing as a horsefish. There's a specific kind of seahorse where they just have this like things which look like branches going out of them, and it's purely to make their outline hard to distinguish. That way, when they're hiding between the coral, then it's very, very hard to see. It's very, very hard to see them. But yeah, props to the one who discovered this. I think it's the same person who then went ahead and did like a bunch of expeditions. Yeah, they just straight up had like eel expeditions where they would go to like specific locations and they would try to find eels there, and they would see how big the eels are. This way they would manage to build a line. So like if I go north, I get bigger eels, then clearly the small, and I go south, I get smaller eels, then clearly they must come from where the smaller eels are. So I'll continue going south. Using this method, they made basically rings, where they went, in this ring there's eels of this size and this age. And then as they got closer to the center, the rings became smaller and smaller until eventually they did manage to find where they come from. Very cool, very awesome. A lot of work. Like, this took years. This wasn't like a casual afternoon. Like, this took years. And it was a man whose basically entire job was thinking about eels like 24/7. Like, this took a lot of dedication. It's basically the one guy. There's like the one guy that led this project, and he was like eels were his hyper obsession. You know, he probably had the autism. Eels were a special interest, and he just dedicated his life to them. And he managed to crack a lot of their mysteries, which is insane. Like the amount of knowledge we have about them is like all thanks to this guy. Next fact. If you split a Planarian flatworm head in half, it will become a two-headed worm. But when I say cut in half, do note that when I say cut in half here, I don't mean you decapitate them. If you decapitate them, you're just gonna end up with two worms. Instead, what I mean is if you literally go like to the middle of their head and just like cut a line. You know the kind of like the way that the parasites in the anime Parasite work. You just like cleave a line through their face. The two parts, they aren't just gonna fuse. Like, they aren't just gonna fuse together to become one part again. Each one of them is gonna independently grow into a head. And then you're gonna end up with, well, a two-headed Planarian flatworm. You're never gonna guess why they call them flatworm. Spoiler! They're very flat! They don't have the difference between roundworms and flatworms is that... So, you have a gut. As a human, you have a gut, and your gut always has space in it. Even if there's nothing passing through it, your gut is still gonna have like empty space that's reserved for food. Flatworms don't have that. Flatworms, their gut just expands when food comes in, and that's why they're flat. Roundworms are different though. Roundworms do have a little bit of space, which is why they're round. Crazy, I know, biologists actually naming things with a good name that explain what it does? That never happens. They usually give them like shit names. I don't know why they call them Planarian though. I guess because they're so flat, they're like a plane. Also, strangely enough, whenever they regenerate like they regenerate their guts first. There's no space in it, and it's slightly different than how a normal gut works. So it's like a semi-gut thingy. The pseudo-gut always regenerates first, and then they regenerate the rest of the body. So clearly they're thinking with their guts, something which I could say about several humans as well. But yeah, Planarian flatworms are insane. Every time they're literally cut immune. They're immune to death by slashing. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Because whenever you cut them, you just get more of them. Actually, a lot of worms can do this, and it's because of the relatively simple body structure. And worms don't have an exoskeleton, but they do have an outside cuticle. Like their skin's kinda like an exoskeleton, but not really, because it's not hard. But they do have like a rigid outer layer, essentially. They have, when they first start forming, like as like embryos, they're made out of three layers. There's like 3 layers of cell. There's the cell that would become the gut, the cell that would become the middle layer, and then the cuticle of the outside. And it's not just unique to worms. It's like everything, like all the insects with exoskeletons do this as well, where they start off with 3 layers. Final fact for today. Planarian flatworms that regenerate in space grow a head out of their bum. What the fuck? I do not know why they do that. I don't think anyone knows why they do that, but we know that they do that because astronauts took them to space and then cut them in half. And when they did, the part with the head didn't grow their bum back. They grew another head. But why? Amazing question. I don't know. Probably the fact that the gravity isn't the same fricked with like internal liquids and their internal mechanisms, and they didn't know which way is their bum, which way is their head, and they end up growing another head. So then you get a two-headed worm, except instead of the two heads looking like a hydra, it's like a manticore. You have one head on each side. They're like Siamese twins, except they don't have a bum now. Probably not very good. Bums are very important. I mean, I would assume less so for worms, but they are pretty important for humans. Very important for running long distances. It makes you more efficient at using your energy, which is very, very, very important. Okay, so I think this is enough for our fun fact section, because we did all the facts.